Shall we begin?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Sunny Wednesday, 651 Carpet Studios. It's Nordo in for PA. PA returning on Monday. Getting all those vocal maintenance days out of the way. Counting down, of course, training camp. 20 days. Yeah, 3 weeks from yesterday. I think Tuesday the 25th. Veterans report to Egan as Vikings training camp gets underway. How quickly the summer comes and goes. Hope all of you had a happy 4th. Brett, thanks for hanging out with me today.
No
Double
problem.
duty. You were down the hall.
Yes.
Hope everything went well on AM 1130.
We didn't stumble. We kept it moving, and Robbie was very professional.
Robbie was professional.
Yes.
Well,
He did talk about something about Tic Tacs that we'll have to discuss later.
I got to listen to the podcast because I don't believe a word you just said. But I hope you had a happy 4th. And I must say, I want to start off 9 to noon before jumping into things. Timber Tech set list. And a couple of guests today. It's not the newsiest of points in our lives at this particular point. Again, 4th of July, long holiday. Some of you are probably still in the midst of it. Maybe you're returning home this morning, etc. I just want to thank all of you parents out there, specifically with young children. Really two groups of people. So it's you parents out there that have young children. And then it's you folks out there that have dogs or puppies. I just really appreciate you guys keeping your babies and your dogs quiet so people could go out and shoot fireworks throughout all hours of the night last night. I just want to thank all you parents out there, dog owners, at least for one night, respecting those, firing off mortar rounds and Roman candles until what it felt like was dawn this morning. For one night, I think it's okay to shoot off fireworks.
I'm kind of with you, too. I'm a big firework guy. I like it.
I do not.
Okay.
There's been, I can't remember who said it, but they kind of talked about how sometimes the questions that a kid will ask that we laugh at, like they still have, there's still a lot of wonder in their brains, right? They're trying to grasp everything. Why are things this way? How does this work? They're still trying to grasp the world around them. And for us, as we get older, we're just bitter,
correct,
soulless, just bags of skin, just roaming aimlessly on our never-ending journey to the middle. Fireworks for me, I've lost the luster. But for those that still love to do it, and my kids, by the way, they adore it. So
now yesterday I didn't partake, but if I was home in the humble beginnings of, suburban Iowa, and there's a whole huge field, that adrenaline rush you get when the fuse finally lights.
What part of, they get the hell away from it. What part of Iowa did you grow up in?
Altoona, Iowa, suburb of Des Moines. Your guy would know it as the place Prairie Meadows is, which he regularly bags on as a bad horse racing track. But that's the one.
I've heard it's not the best.
It was my first job at Prairie Meadows.
Oh, what'd you do?
So I bust tables up where people put bets in on the horses.
Oh,
and
hell yeah.
I was awful at it. I was terrible.
How old were you when you got your first job?
15?
Okay.
Yeah, 15, 16.
My first job was at Dairy Queen
Okay.
on the hilltop of Mankato, Minnesota.
How were you at that?
I didn't last. I 9 months. Yeah. Well, here's the problem. Don't leave a bunch of 14, 15, and the elder in the group is 16. Don't leave us unsupervised.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how the kids' meal toys end up in the fryer. I'm sorry. Wasted a ton of
I
product.
always love that one.
It wasn't very efficiently run.
The bad thing for me is the first job at Prairie Meadows is I can't stand the big 3 horse races. It's ruined it for me. Like any enjoyment of the Kentucky Derby, I just associate it with like the worst days of the year. It was a zoo. Every single time, the Belmont, the Preakness, disaster.
Sorry to hear you had to work hard, Brett.
Yeah, I know. Poor
Really
me.
sorry about that. Absolutely. Moving on from that, TimberTech set list momentarily. It's a 2-guest show today. Mike Florio around 9:35. And then Johnny Athletic, John Krasinski, will join at 11 to talk about really kind of the news. I mean, you got Twins blowing up the Royals, 17 runs over the last couple of games. Pablo Lopez goes this evening. Royce Lewis is out for 6 weeks. The injury situation with that kid is never ending. So whether it's, unbelievable. Buxton, I think he hit a home run yesterday, so we dig that. But the injury issues persist, and when he's not hitting and he can't play center field, there's zero value. Top pick in Royce Lewis, couple of knee-related problems, and now I think it's an oblique. So there's 6 more weeks. He can't get healthy. And then Correa with plantar fasciitis. So this is everything's going according to plan for a division-winning team in 2023. But the news coming about maybe 36 hours ago or so, Anthony Edwards and that fat Timberwolves extension. $5 years, $260 million. Worth up to, I should say. And this coming from, I saw this in ESPN, and then I want to jump into Johnny Athletic's piece. I'm not being a Grinch, by the way. It was a joke. I love the 4th as it pertains to fireworks. Even though, yes, I no longer dream. I no longer aspire. I saw this from ESPN. Edwards is the 4th member of his draft class to agree on a max contract extension. Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton, LaMelo Ball down at Charlotte. Tough year for him and the Hornets. And then Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane allowing us to find and feel the bane of our existence as he was hitting threes and effectively unstoppable a couple of postseasons ago for the Memphis Grizzlies. So it's guaranteed $207 million. And then it has the All-NBA escalator clause in it that can bring it from 207 up to 260. So making the All-NBA, him continuing to grow. So from The Athletic, and he's going to join at 11, it's a moment to be excited, loving Ant. And there's some things specifically in the article and a couple of quotes that I'm going to get to momentarily, maybe around the corner. But that is where, and Johnny hits it right out of the gates. And this is where I'd love your input on a Wednesday morning. 64686, the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Is history, as Johnny puts it, is not on Anthony Edwards' side. So the big smile and the personality, and I can't really call it bravado. That's the one thing about Ant in the few years that he's been here, is in the same vein that we will laugh about a certain member of the Timberwolves talking about a game-winning free throw being what movies are made of, or living on a different universe in terms of how his skills might add up in the all eras in history of the game, and just some of that over-the-top lack of just being in touch with reality from a certain member of the Wolves. I think Anthony Edwards is, for the most part, except when he's dunking on people, he's kept his feet pretty firmly on the ground. Now, with that said, history on his side in regard as it pertains to Johnny's article, whether it was Kevin Love and then Ricky, that dynamic duo that filled some box scores once in a while but didn't work out. The coaching of Rick Adelman and Tibbs. We get Wiggins. We had Jimmy Butler. Jimmy couldn't fix this. Zach LaVine, he goes to Chicago, and, well, frankly, maybe we should have kept him. Of course, Karl Anthony Towns most recently. The things we've done just in the last 10 or 15 years, Al Jefferson prior to that, after we move on from Kevin Garnett. So many have tried, and thus far everyone has failed to, quote-unquote, turn this thing around. And so 64686, we'll dig into this maybe next segment in the 10 a.m. hour possibly as well. The faith of the vision. Because there's the excitement factor of Anthony Edwards being here. And some quotes from Connolly. This is quickly becoming, if not already it is, Anthony Edwards' team. But keeping the core together, is the vision with the current roster going to help or hinder this young kid's opportunity to take over this franchise and allow those to hold on for dear life to those coattails as he brings us up the Western Conference standings? But he's secured. He's here. He's our guy. And that part is exciting. Many other questions, not only drawn up via the article that Johnny Krasinski wrote, but questions that you as Wolves fans have, me as a Wolves fan that I have, in terms of how this franchise appears to be moving forward or perpetually stuck in cement, as it is felt at other times. But we will get to that not only around the corner, but your text messages, 64686, booth at KFAN.com is another option. TimberTech set list, timbertech.com. It's easy, Johnny K. At 11 o'clock, Mike Florio diving into the NFL around 9:35. Some Vikes bites, more Wolves talkers around the corner as well. And some other talk. It's a Talker Wednesday. It is I have no alliterative phrase for a Talker Tuesday was yesterday. Today's just a Wednesday. And it's Nordo in for PA. We'll be back. Thank you for listening to The Fan a day after a holiday.
Need somebody to help me say it one time.
Listen to The Fan.
If you want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN show, now you can. You make your voice heard on the Brad, Sean, Brian KFAN text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Much better than minimum wage. No matter how things work, you're still gonna get paid. You got it for a minute more. It's either working McDonald's or the corner store. A quick money fix from a kilo or two, and then the city comes down. What would you do? You take a welfare state, a rental mistake, and keep the cycle spinning around. Dope man's got the upper hand. People wanting it as much as they can, because the Swedens, they'll always stay the same. And for some people, it's the only way to stay. Say goodbye for a minute more. A life of crime or hanging around the liquor store. A quick drug fix to get you through when the city comes down.
I love my brothers from the Power Trip, but there's just
But
somebody ate a sucker and then now just the stick is sticking to the carpet. And I stepped on it as I was returning to the studio. Yes, we're barely house trained here at the Fan. And that's what I kind of felt yesterday, hanging out on the 4th, families together, just trying to enjoy, avoiding the raindrops, and all the kids, mostly similar ages. They had a blast, and that's the A topic. It was a Talker Tuesday yesterday. It's a Wing It Wednesday. Thanks to the 64686 Brad, Sean, Bryant text line. But I was just surrounded by a lot of adults yesterday, and I felt like the child of the adults. Big opinions, sophistication, intelligence. And then there's just me, just trying to wind out the clock on a holiday. Get in a cheap laugh where I can. And just avoid sounding like too much of an idiot. We're barely house trained here at the Fan. A couple of text messages. and then we'll move on to some Vikes Bites, and we'll return to the Anthony Edwards conversation during the 10 o'clock hour. Offloading Cat's contract and picking up pieces before we have to extend Gobert or McDaniels will be the key to being a contender. Now, at this stage, I'm just going to be honest with this texter. I didn't get he didn't include the name. I'm not necessarily worried at this point about trying to extend Gobert. No! We got some stuff to figure out. And that is part of the summertime conversation. We can get into the Timberwolves reportedly being one of the teams that have reached out to the Portland Trailblazers. It feels like 4 or 5 years now. At least I'd say let's go 20. Let's just say 2020. So the last 3 off seasons, that the Damian Lillard will he stay, will he go conversation, and it's probably been longer than that. But this summertime conversation with the Wolves is keep it together or let it go. Now, again, referencing that piece in The Athletic from Johnny Krasinski is all signs have pointed, all conversations. I would include or encourage you anytime that Tim Connolly's on with Barrera, listen. And I think that, and it's podcastable with the free iHeart app as well, but just getting insight from Tim as the Pobo, trying to make this stuff happen. Big connection with Anthony in particular. I think the absolutely fantastic relationship he has with Chris Finch. So that helps in terms of trying to elevate Ant. I also think that really, really helps Chris Finch. And I think those lines being drawn in terms of his future and his tenure with the Wolves, backing the right horse in some respects. You see him, I saw him at playoff games in the offseason and such after, of course, the Wolves lost in 5 to the Nuggets. But the relationship and the connection there, and then with Tim Connolly, how all of this comes together in the summertime, where if you are going to elevate Ant, and you're saying that that we're going to run it back, I guess it's a common term now, we're going to run it back, that not only affects your decision and what you're doing with Ant, but that impacts really the totality of his contract and yet another generation of high-end draft pick meets weird, in some ways discombobulated pieces around him, meets potential frustration and mediocrity, meets a potential coaching change, meets a, why don't we get together July 5th, 2028 and engage in this same conversation. So the choice that they make with Cat moving forward, very important. Now, the conversation that we were having in recent weeks, I think Gleeman was in studio, and kind of questions of, well, what can you get for Cat? You can get a lot for Cat. And the way that you're seeing the $260 million extension for Anthony Edwards, you're seeing rookie extensions for sixth men in the league, guys that are playing 30 minutes a night, but they're coming off the bench. They're making $1. They're making $125 million extension contracts as sixth men in the NBA. Tons of money to go around. Somebody will take Cat's contract. That's not the worrisome aspect of it. The worrisome aspect of it is simply Cat missed 50 games last year. Does the team already know how much faith they have in that combination of Gobert and Cat? They just re-up Naz Reid. In some ways, I thought at times last year, Reid was better with Gobert than Cat was with Gobert. But Cat certainly is the better offensive player. There's no denying that. So we'll get back into this into the 10 a.m. hour. But that is the summer of silliness with the Wolves, is running it back. Are they actually in earnest, trying to figure out what a Damian Lillard type or something like that looks like? And how this thing's going to look into 2023. But to Vikes Bites. Vikes Bites each and every day is presented by our friends
Vikes Bites
at Stoked Barbecue Pellets, StokedBBQ.com, the pride of Caledonia, Minnesota. StokedBBQ.com, whether it's at Von Hansen's locations, Northern Fire in Minnetonka. You've heard me talking about my buddies there for a long time. Anderson Barbecue Supply, Northside, Vadnais Heights, Smokestack in Brainerd and Alexandria. They're all over the freaking place. Greg's Meats down in Hampton. Jump off 52, pick up a couple of bags, pick up some beef sticks. Hell yeah. StokedBBQ.com. Vikings report to training camp in 20 days. And this is where the page turns. And I saw this from Seifert, Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. This is where the constant of this Vikings team really sits. The offense. And there are questions within the offense. But a simple Vike bite for you on a Wednesday following a holiday. And I can't stress this enough. And maybe I'll jump back into this with Florio next segment too. He wrote that piece talking about the kind of the planned rebuild. I would say an artful demolition of this team. And if they can put themselves in a spot to maybe load up and then go all in and go up and get one of those QBs, that leads to what? That leads to Kirk going away next fall, or next spring rather, March 2024. That leads to a changing of the guard, all without sacrificing some of your young talent. Do you re-sign a TJ? When are you going to re-up a Christian Darrisaw, et cetera? Now, those are evergreen. We've talked about that 100 times. So there's nothing new in that regard. But the offense being the constant, this is why this team can't win 6 games. And if it does win 6 games, something went really bleeping wrong. And it's a disaster of a season. And it should not be lauded as some sort of tactical demolition of this team. Something went seriously wrong if Kirk Cousins, with his second year in this offense, does not improve. All those sacks, look at Ed Ingram. Ed Ingram certainly has to be better. But Kirk has to be faster decision-making in the pocket, too. Second year with this offense. That should happen. Adding Jordan Addison via the draft. That is a positive. Now, we haven't gotten to see him. That's the worst. That was the worst thing about the spring. From, after rookie camp through OTAs. I just wanted to be excited about Addison. Still am. But I got to wait 20 days now. But that should be a positive. The running game. 28th in attempts last year. As I've said many times, I'm stumping for Dalvin. I get it. He's gone. But the key is whether it's Dalvin, and he's gone now, but Alexander Mattison. I saw in Seifert's article, by the way, that he believes that Ty Chandler would be the favorite as of now to get that second running back spot. And he's dead on, by the way. The Kene Nwangwu thing, and maybe there are certain kick return, punt return experts out there that can explain to me how Kene Nwangwu, in the wind, depth perception, all of those things, he's as trustworthy as it gets, catching a punt or a kickoff. He drops screen passes out of the backfield. He just didn't catch balls at Iowa State, and he hasn't done it here in Minnesota. And now he's into his third year. And so third chance to prove that he can catch the ball and be that guy, hasn't done it yet. So Ty Chandler, maybe the understudy, the guy that spells Alexander Mattison, the efficiency of the run game. This offense just can't be bad enough. That's the problem for the tank job. The tank vibe can't exist. Now, the defense has to improve, certainly. And by nature of just not having the same luck a year ago, you might put you in an 8 or a 9 win territory, which is the territory of purgatory in the NFL. I think 9 wins puts you in a spot where you're talking week 17, week 18, you're still battling with the Lions, maybe for the division. But you're just not going to be bad enough to go up and get one of those QBs. The offense is the constant of this team. And so that is really why, at least 9 to noon, we've been so obsessed and we've been trying to talk like Brian Flores walks on water, because he's going to need to, for this team to replicate some of the memories that we saw in 2022. So good piece. I encourage you to read it from Kevin Seifert on the offense as we get nearer and nearer. 3 weeks from yesterday, training camp opening up at TCO in Eagan. That's Vikes Bites, presented by Stoked Barbecue Pellets. When we return, Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, NFL news, Vikings opinions, all of those things. We're going to chat with Florio around
0.3 KFAN. Father of mine, tell me where have you been? You know I just closed my eyes, my whole world disappeared.
You can just close your eyes and let Amazon guide you to whether it's Playmakers or it's Father of Mine, author, and of course Pro Football Talks. Mike Florio joining me this morning. How was your 4th, Mr. Florio?
It was fine. What, Paul doesn't work on the 5th? Is it vocal maintenance? Did he have like a bunch of real work to do yesterday, and he's got to protect those pipes for future use?
Yeah, it's what would he say? He would say it's 3-job terrorism. I don't know if you know this, Michael, but I've been the announcer at Canterbury full-time since 1998, called 9 races on July 3rd. There was a fireworks show. Smoke got into my lungs. Can't breathe. Got racing tonight into the weekend. Something like that, yeah. But certainly 20 days until training camp, he's got to get the pipes right. I mean, it's all...
Yeah, he's got to be ready to go. He's got to be ready to go. The time of the year where he actually works, 80% capacity is coming.
Yeah, in the same way, like NFL players maybe look at the 4th of July as turn the page. Now it's, I got to get back in the weight room. PA, chamomile, bubble baths, a lot of tea, and he's doing the same thing in preparation.
Well, he needs it. He definitely needs it. He has demonstrated over the years that he wants it and he takes it. And I shouldn't hate, because he's got something figured out where he gets to rest his voice periodically, and nobody ever says anything about it other than me.
You don't sound like you really believe in this entire thing. You think this entire thing is a con game.
I don't know that it's a con game. I mean, the con is out in the open. He's not even trying to hide it. Right? He calls it vocal maintenance sarcastically, so I just call him out on it. But I always enjoy talking to you. For some reason, he thinks I'm mean to you. He asked that question recently for one of our PFTPM podcasts. What have I ever done that's mean to you?
I've always enjoyed our conversations. I think we have a great time. And we actually, in a lot of cases, will talk more about actual sports, I think, sometimes than you and PA do.
Well, that's right. But that's because PA and I are the same age, and we wax nostalgically, and you and I can't relate to a lot of the things that he and I could end up talking about for 20 minutes, like an episode of the Brady Bunch or something like that.
No, that's a very good point. I wasn't a big fan of the Brady Bunch. I was babysat by MTV. So that's early millennial, late Gen X. I'm a disaster in many ways in terms of pop culture. So speaking of disasters, heading up to Foxborough, and all those titles, all those pictures of trophies painted on private planes. And now there may be some tension between the owner Kraft, the coach Belichick. And is that real? Is that palpable? Or is it just assumed after a couple of years of mediocrity that this is just the natural route that it would take?
Well, what we're seeing is what happens when you have anyone in a position of prominence in any organization who doesn't have the most effective people skills. And whatever the business you're in, it's ultimately driven by relationships. And you have to have good relationships with the people you work with. You have to have good relationships with the people you work for. And I'm not saying that Bill Belichick has bad relationships all around him, but he has a certain style that is not conducive to warm and fuzzy. And it works if you're winning. And it doesn't work if you're not winning. The Parcells approach, it doesn't work if you're not winning. And it's one of the reasons why the people who leave the Belichick nest and go elsewhere, if they don't win fairly quickly, it all falls apart. Because even when they say, I'm going to do it my way, I'm going to be different, they've picked up so much of him by osmosis that they don't even realize that they're doing it. They don't realize how much of him has seeped into them and who they are and how they do things. Look at Matt Patricia in Detroit, what a disaster that was. So now that the Patriots aren't winning, and there's always going to be pressure to keep winning, the fascinating experiment that this creates for us is, what's the shelf life of 6 Super Bowl wins? What's the expiration date? Yeah. How long can you go? How low can you go? How much will be forgiven, forgotten, and overlooked as you get farther and farther away from the glory days that have passed you by? There's got to be a point where if the coach wants to keep going, ownership is going to say, we have to make a change. And I just feel like enough has been said this offseason to allow us to read between the lines and say, we're getting closer to the point where Robert Kraft says, I need to make a change. And that's what's fascinating about this, because this is unprecedented. The dominance we saw from the Patriots in the salary cap era with the 6 championships where it was 3 and then a decade and then 3 more, and consistent contention in between, and all those playoff appearances and appearances in the AFC Championship. Incredible run. Now it's over. We hadn't seen that, and now we haven't seen this back end where it's just not what it was. How long can that last?
Yeah, it's super interesting to me, and maybe it's the mild salsa mentality, the Midwestern sensibilities. But as a Vikings fan, I think some would flippantly say, "Man, you get us one trophy, and we get to party on Hennepin Avenue in the heart of Minneapolis. That guy gets a lifetime contract, right?" But
what comes now? But that's the thing. You don't know that until you get the one.
Exactly.
I feel like the Eagles fans got worse after they got their one, that they wanted again. It was like crack for them, right?
Yeah.
And they've had a higher standard and anxiety. And so it's easy to say when you don't have any that all you want is one. But once you get one, what do? You don't just fold the franchise and say, well, we climbed the mountain, we're going to shut down the expedition company and go find something else to do with our time. So that's really the thing. Now, look, I'm sure all Vikings fans would like to find out how it feels, but I don't think that it just goes away. And I don't think Patriots fans are going to fill that stadium in perpetuity simply because they have 6 Super Bowl championships.
No, it's a great point. Absolutely. Now, looking back home here in Minnesota, I want to frame it up like this, because it's 2 different routes. But which one, and this maybe bleeds into a conversation that you had with PA, kind of the rebuilding, the scheduled or tactical demolition that Kwesi's trying to go through, which is really in some ways what he's trying to do. But which route do you have more long-term faith in? What Ryan Poles is doing in Chicago, it's a burn it down, completely replant everything. It's picks, it's equity, it's cash, and just starting from the bottom up, versus what Kwesi is trying to do, where he's balancing so many things right now in terms of trying to get all the weeds out and become more financially stable while trying to strive for competitiveness and success in the process. Is there one that feels right or more right to you in the long term for either?
Well, it's all driven by results. So let's see which one works. And just because one or the other works now doesn't mean one or the other is going to work in the future. The key is, and I heard from a head coach with a different team, not from Belichick, obviously, after I posted the item yesterday about the tensions that are palpable now between Belichick and Robert Kraft. And look, it's all driven by quarterback. Once that great quarterback's gone, what do? Once you find that great quarterback, you're set. So however you try to do it, it's kind of like you're in a dark room and you know there's a light switch there somewhere. You just can't find it. So you got different strategies for trying to find it without busting your ass and putting a gash in your forehead. That's basically what it is. So that's where the Bears are. That's where the Vikings are. That's where anybody is that doesn't have one of those top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that makes you a contender each and every year for as long as the guy's there. Right now, that standard is Mahomes. Everybody'd love to have Mahomes. The Chiefs are the only one that has him. Other teams have quarterbacks that are still in that category, but you know what? Most of the teams that don't have Mahomes would trade their guy for Mahomes right now if they could. So Mahomes is the ultimate platinum standard right now. He's one of one. So there's a way to flip that switch where you have Patrick Mahomes light in your room, but how do you find it? And that's the key. And part of it is luck, part of it is strategy, part of it's being in the right place at the right time. There's so much that goes into it, but I think that's the long goal, that there's no guarantee that anyone's ever going to answer. Where's that light switch that's going to give me a franchise quarterback? And, you know, I think you and I talked about it. I know PA and I were arguing about it, the idea that there hasn't been a franchise quarterback. I started rattling off all the names of everyone since Fran Tarkenton. There hasn't been a true Vikings franchise quarterback. There have been guys that we thought would be, like a Dante Culpepper, but there hasn't been a true franchise quarterback. And until you have that. I mean, that's the glory days of the franchise in the 70s. Even though the defense was great, they had a guy who was in his era and based on the standards that apply then, because the numbers don't look impressive now. But in that day, they were impressive. And he had the thing that we're looking for now in quarterbacks, the ability to make chicken salad out of a play that falls apart, because he would just run around until something happened. So that's what every team's trying to get. And the Bears may already have it in Justin Fields. Who knows? They'll find out this year. But the Vikings, I think, know they don't have it in Kirk Cousins. And my simplest argument is if they knew it was Cousins, he would not be in a position where he could walk away as a free agent after this year. And they're trying to come up with a way to eventually get that guy that will be the next Fran Tarkenton.
That's Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. Find him at Pro Football Talk via Twitter. Find his books, Father of Mine, the most recent one. It sounds like there's a sequel in the mix. And, of course, Playmakers available via Amazon. Now, I don't root for people to get fired. But this ESPN thing has felt kind of like an inevitability. News coming out for those listening to 9 to Noon that aren't aware. I mean, there's the mass exodus of long-tenured, well-known names at ESPN over the last 5 or 6 days has been incredible to watch. And it's, again, not rooting for people to lose their jobs or livelihoods, but it has always felt inevitable that this would happen. Where have you sat on this?
Well, it's inevitable for one very simple reason, and we're living through the seismic shift in the way that people consume televised content. It's not even on a television anymore. A smart TV is basically a computer with a bunch of apps that stream, what you could just watch on your desktop or your tablet or your phone. The traditional TV is gone. The model is disintegrating, cable and satellite. And ESPN was able to be so lucrative, and probably why Disney bought them in the first place. When you've got ESPN and ESPN2 and ESPN this and ESPN that, and each channel is included in a basic cable package or a basic satellite package. So if you want any of the channels, you got to buy all of them. And ESPN's getting its subscriber fee for each of its channels from someone that never watches. They were making millions upon millions from people who never turned on ESPN. Now the model's changing. And it's bad for ESPN because it's got to tighten the belt and people lose their jobs. But for the consumer, it's good because now we don't waste all that money on things that we don't use. So it's actually good news. I wrote something today about some comments from Stephen A. Smith where he basically said that the folks at ESPN deserve better, not from Disney, but they deserve better because of the times we live in. And it's not like, I never know if the economy's good or not because who knows? The sky's falling, the sky's not falling, who knows? But the business model is changing as it relates to consumption of video, and it allows us all to have a lot more power and influence over where we spend our dollars. So you want Peacock, you get Peacock. You want Netflix, you want Netflix. You don't want Peacock, you just get rid of Peacock, or you just don't buy it in the first place. But you don't have to have this massive package where you spend $150 a month and you get Peacock and Disney Plus and Hulu and Netflix. That's basically the apples-to-apples comparison.
Right.
You can't just buy one streaming service, you got to buy them all. That's how it used to be with cable. So if you owned one of the prominent ones, you were good to go. So that's what's happening. It's good for consumers. It's bad for the people who work for the content provider. And when Stephen A. Smith says more is coming, whether he means short-term or long-term, it's coming because the shift continues, and at some point there won't be cable packages, and there won't be satellite packages, and it'll be you just go out and buy whatever it is that you want.
Could you ever see a future in which ESPN, and maybe nearer future than farther out, the idea that eventually they are just a live sports provider, as you mentioned, more of the the a la carte access that we have, and maybe Amazon picking up certain games and Apple TV and other sports being very prominent as well. That ESPN in the long term they can say, because there was a conversation, it's got to be like a decade ago now, but wow, I can't believe ESPN is outbidding everybody for every sports. And that comes down to justifying all those channels you mentioned and all those packages. But the amount of money that they have locked up, and then their day-to-day programming, you basically see it in waiting rooms and maybe when you're at the treadmill at the gym. and nobody watches that stuff. So at some point, just being ESPN is my live sports provider, a la carte app based, and that's kind of where they find their way through this financially.
And then the question becomes, what other content do they provide? What else is on TV or on their app when you're not watching live sports? Will there just be nothing? Will they have a select handful of profitable shows? I mean, that's why they threw all the money at Pat McAfee. And people are losing their minds about that, but the bottom line is they believe they're going to turn a profit from that relationship, or they wouldn't have paid him what they're paying him. They believe they turn a profit from Stephen A. Smith, or they wouldn't pay him what they're paying him. They're identifying the spots where they can trim fat, where they can cut costs, because at the end of the day, Disney owns it. Disney is publicly traded. The ultimate obligation is to the shareholder to maximize value, maximize profit, and that's what they're trying to do. So, you raise an interesting point. Will there be a time where ESPN is just another streaming service that you pay for so that when there is a live sporting event you'd like to see, you can see it, and all that other stuff just isn't part of the mix? I mean, SportsCenter has no relevance whatsoever in today's sensibility.
Agreed.
What is the purpose of watching SportsCenter? Especially in comparison to what it once was. What it once was the only place you get to see highlights. There's no place else you can see highlights. Now you see highlights everywhere you want, everywhere you can. What is SportsCenter? I never watch it. I don't even know what's on there. I figure highlights are, you talked about MTV. I mean, remember when MTV stopped showing music videos? Like, what is it without music videos?
Yeah, it was awful.
It's nothing. What's SportsCenter without highlights that people haven't seen yet? It's nothing. And that's part of what you're getting at. ESPN eventually may just be live sports and nothing else.
All right, my last thing for you, and I've kind of jumped around, gone down various pathways. I'm going to do so.
That's fine.
Do so.
My hangover is subsided. I'm good to go. I can talk about whatever.
Fireworks in the field.
I don't need vocal maintenance.
Booze barn and play, and you're back at it the next morning. It's impressive.
That's right. No fireworks last night. I've reached my lifetime limit of fireworks. I've learned. It happened more when I turned 55 than when I turned 50. You just kind of reach your limit of things that you used to like, but I've oohed and awed enough. Like, you can't show me a firework that is going to make me say, wow, I've never seen that before. You get to a point where you've seen it all. You know the drill. We have our dog now, and we've had her for 5 years, and she gets traumatized by the noise, so that's another reason that we don't do it, and we didn't do it, and I didn't miss it. Especially because, it sounded like for 2 hours we were in a war zone, and we saw some of them popping up that others had. So, booze, yes. Fireworks, no. And obviously, you got to go one or the other. If you go both, you're going to have a problem.
No, that's true. Absolutely. Sober drivers and sober fireworks operators. That's I have that tattooed somewhere. Last thing for you, though. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. We talked about this last Friday, myself and Paul Charchian, about the Lions. They're favored in Vegas and everywhere to win the North. But this is Ben Johnson on Jared Goff. One of the biggest reasons why I didn't want to leave. I feel we are tied together to a degree. He's an extension of me. I'm an extension of him. I've told him multiple times his success is my success and vice versa. And just kind of wrapping it up here, the way that Jared Goff has really found, I would say, not only leadership, but getting the most out of what he can offer with that Lions offense. And then kind of thinking back, in some ways, did they get it wrong in L.A. with Jared Goff in the process of moving on? I know they got the Super Bowl, but what they had to give up to get Stafford in that process versus what we've seen from Goff with McVay and now through or a couple of years in Detroit. What do we think of Goff?
This takes us back to where we started, right? The notion of what you're really trying to do. What were the Rams trying to do? They were trying to win a Super Bowl. And they concluded that Jared Goff was not going to allow them to win a Super Bowl. He was not going to be the one to deliver it, and the team wasn't going to be good enough around him to win with him because he wasn't capable of making the big play in the big spot. And I think back to the play against the Patriots in Super Bowl 53 when Brandon Cooks was wide-ass open on a play that they ran in the first half, and it worked, and he didn't see Cooks then. I imagine in that 25-minute halftime, they said, look, this play worked, and we're going to do it again, and it's going to work. and all you got to do is hit him. And he didn't see him in time. He threw it late. He threw it behind him. He had to wait on it. One of the McCourties, I think Jason it was, ran over and broke it up. And I think that's the moment that you say, you know, when you have that opportunity that you grew up dying for. This is my 3-2-1 moment. You either step up or you don't, and he didn't. And I think the Rams made the assessment he's never going to be the guy to take him over the top. Now, for the Lions, are they worried about getting over the top? Or are they just worried about getting, 20% of the way up the mountain? So what the Lions have been trying to do, Goff is perfect. But what's coming for the Lions is playoff appearance, big moment, Goff doesn't deliver, and then you ask the tougher question, who do we need to take us to the next level? And I feel like that's coming for the Lions. And Ben Johnson's saying what he has to say because he's got one foot out the door anyway. There wasn't an opportunity that was right for him this year. You don't say no to an opportunity to become a head coach in the NFL because you never know when that window is going to open again. Just ask Byron Leftwich. So Johnson's saying what he has to say to get the most out of this year so the window opens for him after this year, and he won't think twice about walking away from Jared Goff and the Lions when the time comes for him to get a team where he thinks it's going to be the right opportunity, the right time, and the right chance for him to carve out the kind of career he's looking for.
I love it, man. Thanks as always for joining me. Glad to hear that you had a fun fourth, and we'll chat again next week, all right?
All right, pal. See you.
All right, thank you. That's Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. And, of course, check out his books via Amazon. Father of Mine, Playmakers, and maybe a sequel coming up as well. But longtime weekly guest Wednesday mornings, 9 to noon, whether it's with PA, and this morning with me, Nordo in for PA. Brett Blakemore produces. 10 a.m. hour, got a bunch of your text messages. Keep firing, 64686, Bradshaw and Brian inbox, text line, and then inbox booth at KFAN.com as well. Jumping back into the Howl. And a couple other talkers. Middle hour, Johnny Krasinski of The Athletic join in at 11 and continue to listen.